have your winner by ref stoppage, James Webb.
Declaring the winner by submission via rear naked choke, James Webb.
Declaring your winner by arm triangle, and the new Cage Warriors Middleweight World Champion in the red corner, James Webb!
James Webb transitioned into full-time MMA in 2011, and in the course of the last 9 years he has fought as an amateur, going 5-1, moved to pro, and been a middleweight world champion in one of the most respected MMA organisations in the world. James Webb began his journey into MMA in November of 2014 at Contenders East Anglia, where he won his amateur debut. James's next fight would be in May of 2015, where he'd come up against Danny Mullins in Contenders East Anglia. This would be James's first time experiencing a loss in MMA, and said to me, "It was the first loss in my MMA journey," but would go on to say that he can safely say it means a lot more losing now. James would go on to bounce back in his next fight in December of 2015, where he would re-enter the win column. After this fight, James would go on to win 3 more fights, of which 2 by stoppage, coming by punches and submission. James would finish his amateur career at 5-1 in 2016. James would make his pro debut at British Challenge MMA 18 in February 2017, where he'd come up against Walid Jabri. James would take control of the octagon early and take down Jabri within the first 90 seconds of the fight. Jabri was able to reverse position and get back to the feet and then take James down. James reversed position and was able to get a Darce choke finish at the end of the first round. This was a statement and would force James to take a small leap up in competition in his next fight. James would next fight Miro Jurkovic at Cage Warriors 84, who at the time was 3-0. The fight was largely controlled by the Serbian and would hand James his first loss in professional MMA. 5 months after this fight, James would be back in the octagon against Hendrik Lai, where James would get back into the win column with a second round submission to win the fight. James would now get back into the Cage Warriors octagon against Marcin Prosko at Cage Warriors 92, where he would submit Prosko via rear naked choke with a second left of the first round. James would add to his win streak at Cage Warriors 95 against Pelu Adetola, where once again he would win by submission via rear naked choke in the second round. James would next be fighting in a title eliminator against Jason Radcliffe at Cage Warriors 99. Before the fight, James Webb was largely considered a jiu-jitsu player. However, in this fight, a clean left hook would put Radcliffe to sleep in the first round, and it was quite clear that Webb would be fighting for the then vacant Cage Warriors Middleweight Championship very soon. James said it was meant to be. No one else was really around in the division. I climbed it quick by taking on guys way ahead of me in the rankings. James Webb would now fight for the Cage Warriors Middleweight World Championship at Cage Warriors 102 in London, against the then 7-1 Norwegian prospect Thomas Robertson. The first round was a back-and-forth affair, with strikes being landed by both James and Thomas. The beginning of the second round, Thomas Robertson controlled the fight, but the momentum switched halfway through the round, and the final minute saw James cinching up a deep knee bar and progressing to mount before the bell sounded. James would carry this momentum through to the third round and would take Robertson down and submit him via an arm triangle to become the Cage Warriors Middleweight World Champion. James would say to me that it was the best night of my life for my career to date. James's first title defense was set to be against Matthias Frederick at Cage Warriors 106, the Night of Champions. The fight resulted in a majority decision draw after Frederick would have a point deduction for an illegal slam. The two were set to rematch at Cage Warriors 111, once again in London. The fight was a good back-and-forth affair with James Webb largely controlling the first 3 rounds. The momentum, however, changed in the 4th round, and in the last second, Rich Mitchell stepped in to stop the fight after a barrage of strikes from Frederick. James said that after the fight, he just knew that I had to prove myself and to show everyone I do deserve to fight in the best shows in the world. However, after Cage Warriors 111, James began training regrettably and got injured and couldn't get a lot of sessions in. At Cage Warriors 112, James Webb would go up against Mick Stanton and win a unanimous decision victory to re-enter the winning column. James said that he felt relief after the fight and that it felt great to get that win over Mick Stanton. James Webb is now 7-2-1 and has already been a middleweight champion. He wants to prove himself as one of the best in the world, and now he has re-entered the winning column and is on the trajectory for the Cage Warriors belt again, and the UFC. James Webb is a dedicated fighter, training with some of the most experienced MMA fighters in the UK and Ireland, such as Chris Fields, and some of the most exciting prospects, such as Ian Gary. There are no limits to what James Webb can achieve in MMA. I just want to say a massive thank you to Contenders MMA for allowing me to use some of their clips of James Webb in his amateur days, and also James Webb for allowing me to speak to him and ask him a few questions about his MMA career so far. It means a lot, so thank you.